If you're having trouble finishing the reading section, this might be a place where you can skip a little bit of reading if you know what you're doing. I don't recommend this. I think it's best to read the full passage. These are not very long passages. But notice the question here. Which quotation from an article about this one night in Miami would be most effective evidence for the student to include in support of this claim? So somewhere in this passage is going to be like, the student claims this. That's the part we need to target. There's probably lots of details. Some of those details might help us in other ways, but it's really the claim that we need to think about as we're answering the question. And if I skip, it just literally says at the end here, the student claims. So let's just read that part. The student claims that although Powers was inspired by this meeting, the film is best understood not as a precise retelling of historical events, but rather as a largely imagined but informed representation of them. So again, I don't really even know what they're talking about, but it's not real, it's imagined, right? So I'd be looking for a quote that kind of hits on that same idea. Choice A. When Powers learned of the meeting, he initially planned to write a much longer work about its 4 famous participants rather than focusing on the meeting itself. Doesn't say if the meeting is real or fake, so that doesn't seem to be a part of it. One Night in Miami received numerous awards and nominations, including an Academy Award nomination, blah, blah, blah. No, who cares how good it is? That's not the student's claim. Student's claim is about the real versus imagined. C. Powers has described One Night in Miami as the story of 4 friends encouraging and supporting one another while engaged in a crucial political debate about how best to achieve equality for Black people in the United States. That's great, but it doesn't say whether that debate was a real thing or an imagined thing. So again, this doesn't seem right. Hopefully D has some sort of clue that gives us like a connection. Powers could find only the most superficial historical details, we'll talk about that word in a second, about the meeting, so he read extensively about the 4 individuals and their thinking at the time in an effort to portray what might have happened between them. So notice it doesn't say exactly what I kind of pulled out of those lines, but it's definitely dancing around that same idea. He's imagining what might have happened, right? And superficial means kind of like on the surface. And so if you call like a person superficial, it kind of means that they're like being fake, right? They care about their outward appearance, but in personality is usually bad. But when we talk about it in this case, superficial historical details, it means the same thing, like surface level, right? Like maybe the fact that these 4 guys were in the same place at the same time, right? That's surface level. But what they said at this meeting, that's deeper, right? That's the stuff that they would really love to know so that then they could, have the real account of what happened. But the student is claiming that they don't have those details. So the author of this book, play, whatever, made it up for the sake of having, something kind of imagined that would still convey similar ideas, right? So superficial, kind of on the surface, fake sometimes is another word for it, but it doesn't always have that super negative connotation. In this case, it's just a way of contrasting something real and known with something that's largely imagined. So it does fit here. Hopefully, you don't run into pacing issues where you're going to run out of time. If you are, there are little shortcuts we can take. They're not the best thing because there's always a risk that then we misreading something that was really important to the understanding the question. But if you need to, these questions where they're like, what's the student's claim? These are ones where you usually can very easily skim for where it says like the student claimed and then just focus on that sentence. And hopefully that would be enough to get the question right.